Hello and welcome to another session on arrow function. And apart from this little concept that we'll learn, we'll look at the second part of the Todoist app that we built previously. Part 1 we've built in which we hard-coded that node and the content section. In this particular session, we'll be using some of the knowledge that we have learned, we have accumulated up till now, and we'll try to substitute that in order to make our app a little more dynamic than the previous version. So starting with the arrow function, let's jump right into the code sandbox of ours. I hope you are able to see the screen. So this is nothing but the previous a fork of the previous completed sandbox in which we studied the different definitions of these functions: map, filter, reduce, find, and find index. So basically we saw how we use all of these functions over this particular array and what all we can achieve by these functions, and like we even saw some of the replacements, like in the case of reduce, how can map be substituted instead of that. Now let's move on, and again using this particular array, let's uncomment this particular function, which is giving the half of a variable x. This time let's call it square. Okay, and in the case of square, we will have to multiply the variable by itself like this, and if then we uncomment this and uncomment this. So let's start with the very beginning. We close this, and then we knew in the syntax of the map method, we first apply this dot operator over the array on which we have to use this map method onto. And in this case, the array that is of concern to us is named a, and then we mention the name of the function over which, like, the elements over which the iteration will take place due to this map function. The iteration will take place in the array a, and for every subsequent element of this array a, this particular function will be called, and then the final results will be saved in this new a, and then we are console logging this new a. So that was the refreshments from the earlier session. Let's have a look on the console, and we can see that each of these elements is being squared now. All right, so remember, as we are moving forward and understanding different topics, we are increasing the level of sophistication that we have and we've been using in order to apply these logics and use these particular predefined methods and functions. The next step that we took in order to make our code much more concise is we cut this function and we paste it directly inside this. And then we saw that if we are like writing the entire function inside a particular method, in this case map, we have an option to remove the name of this function. And on doing so, this particular function, which is currently which doesn't have any name, we call this particular function as anonymous function. We saw this up till the previous session. Now moving on, the topic of today is the arrow function. So you might have heard about this term a lot of times if you have read some internet articles or some code on Medium or something. So we call this either the arrow function or popularly the fat arrow notation. So what do we do in that is, if you're writing the function directly inside this map method, you can even further, you can delete this particular function name from here, and in order to represent that this is a function, you have to put this equal sign and then this angle bracket, thus representing this fat arrow, and then and then like the previous manner, we have this curly braces and return statement. And you can see that now we have further reduced the size of our code and the results are the same. Like you can see, in this case we were using the anonymous function, and this is the result generated from the arrow function of ours. So next thing what we can do is, in the further step, if there is only one parameter inside your function, then you can remove these braces as well. Let's say if that was not the case and instead you had two variables like x and y, and instead of having the square of x and y, you were having the multiplication of x into y. Let's say we had a scenario like this. So in this particular case, obviously these braces are mandatory, because then how the code will understand that how many variables are there, because every subsequent variable is separated by this comma. But in our case, since there is only one variable, so we have the relaxation of removing these braces as well. So second step that we took is, first step was removing this function name from there. Second step, we remove the braces as well. But remember, if there are multiple parameters, we don't have that particular relaxation with us. Now, moving even further, if there is only one line of statement in your function, then you can get rid of these curly braces and this return statement as well. So let's say if I remove this and put it like this and bring the ending brace right here, now you can see this particular function has just reduced to not just a one line function, but even it is occupying like the half of the space allocated in this main editor of ours. And you can see the result is still the same. So from that long separate definition of the function to reducing the size of that function into an anonymous function, and then removing the function name, removing the braces from the parameters, and then eventually removing the entire curly braces and the return statement, this particular function has reduced to this. But like every other new piece of technology, or let's say a concept, every modern concept has its pros and cons. The same is applicable to this arrow function as well. Even though that we have seen sequentially how our function was systematically reduced into this little line of code, but to someone who is a beginner, or let's say if you have a very messy project with lots of files and folders inside them, then the usage of such functions, notation can lead to a little confusion on either the reader's end or the writer's end as well. So it is recommended to not just keep reducing the lines of code. The ultimate motive is efficiency along with readability of your code. And I would even go further to say that readability of your code is more important than its efficiency, because your code is like is in the eternal cycle of optimization, right? And what is the use of that code if you're not able to understand what it stands for, right? So because this particular demonstration is dedicated entirely to this fat arrow function, so here we are going to use this like the final level of this notation and write this in one line. But in the upcoming cases, we will try to avoid shrinking this to this size, and we'll try to keep it one level previous to this. That means we will be using that curly braces, right? Now I hope you are able to understand what this arrow function is, and I would like to give you a little assignment on the go, and that is, I have shown you the usage of this arrow function, how to use it on this map method. Now I want you to try and apply this same concept and convert these same anonymous functions or these same externally defined functions into this arrow function, into this fat arrow notation for filter, reduce, find, and find index. For all of them, just keep uncommenting all of this previously written code and keep substituting the functions for this fat arrow function. Now pause this and give it a try yourself. Alright, I hope you were able to achieve that. Let us again comment this out in order to keep our console clear. And moving on to filter, if I go ahead and uncomment this out, so we have an externally defined function right here which is checking the condition of x less than 10. So number one step being, we're going to cut this and paste it inside this. So the function is now defined here itself. Since it is defined here, we are going to remove the name, then we are going to remove the function name, and since there is only one parameter, we are going to remove the braces as well. And because there is only one line of statement, we are going to remove the curly braces as well. So you can see this is applying the condition of only filtering the elements which are lesser than 10 in this array. That was for the filter method. Let us move on to a reduce function, and let us uncomment this out. So in a reduce function, it is going to be a little tricky with us. So first, let us get rid of these console log statements because they are just occupying spaces. Now, since this is already an anonymous function with these two parameters, so first we are going to remove this function from here and then apply the fat arrow like this. Now, remember that up till now, even in map and in filter, we were just having one parameter, and that was the reason that we were removing the braces surrounding these parameters, surrounding this parameter from here. But in this case, in the case of reduce, we are not having just one parameter. Instead, we have two parameters, one accumulator and one current number, and hence we are not free to remove these two braces from there. But we can see that there is only one line of statement here, so we are going to remove the return statement like this and then make it fall in just one line like this. And if you log this, you can see the accumulator is adding up the numbers of this array, and the answer is 128. Now you can see in reduce function, we can see that the reduction in the number of lines of code is really good, because we have reduced those 2-3 lines of code into just one line of code. Now let's comment this out, and finally seeing the find and find index 1. This is an anonymous function. Let's just remove this like this, removing this brace and removing these curly braces as well, writing the fat arrow notation like this, and you can see we are getting the number which is less than 3. Let's make this greater than 10 in order to cross verify, and we're getting 66 because the first number that is greater than 10 is 66. Let's comment this out. And finally, for find index, same the thing that we did with find function, the exact same has to be done with the find index as well, applying the arrow function like this and deleting it. Now you can see the index of the number that is greater than 10 is 66 and its index is 1. So this way you can see that the even in the commented form, the number of lines of code that we wrote has almost reduced to half. All right, because in reduce one, this one is just for the demonstration of map in place of reduce, and if we keep removing these extra spaces, we can see that the number of lines of code that we wrote has now reduced drastically, right? So that was the fat arrow function for us, and I hope you were able to write these fat arrow notation for all of these functions. And in the next part of this session, we'll be seeing the second part of our Todoist app. All right, so we are in the next part of the session, and in this we'll be seeing the second version or the second iteration of our Todoist app. So this particular little application of ours is in the making, and we'll slowly and steadily make it much more dynamic and something that we can bear the courage of opening this to the public as well, because if you're gonna give someone this particular application, I'm pretty sure they are not gonna use this. So what we are doing in this is, so this is basically a practice session for you. The single thing that I want from you in this is, in the initial version, or as you can see right now, there is only one node right here, and the title and the content of this particular node, as you can see in this node.jsx file, it is hard coded right here. Now since the previous version we saw of this Todoist, we learned many new things like props, mapping components, looping, React developer tools, arrow functions, and whatnot. So this time we'll try to we'll try to integrate that particular knowledge that we have gained up till now. So this particular point is yet another milestone for you, and what I want from you is, inside this tasks.js file, you will find that I've created one tasks array consisting of 4 elements, and these have some title and contents like randomly something and something. Let's assume that these are our tasks for the day. So what I want you guys to do is, instead of having this one note or one task right here with a title and content, I want you to render 4 cards here consisting of titles this, and this, and the contents this, and this respectively. Alright, so instead of hard coding stuff right here, somehow using the techniques that we have learned up till now, we are gonna extract the contents of these 4 elements, and we'll turn them into 4 cards right here with this particular content being rendered. And to give you a little hint, you are supposed to only edit these 2 files, node.jsx and app.jsx. So what are you waiting for? Pause this video now and give it a try yourself. This is gonna be a fun practice session. Alright, I hope you were able to achieve that. Sorry guys, I haven't created the final version of this yet, so I was not able to show you the final version of what what was exactly expected from you. But I think let's take it in a good way, because sometimes you will be asked to do things that has never been done before. With that thought, let's start seeing what we have with this. Inside this node component of ours, we have this hard-coded stuff right here, and we know that we used something called React props. All right, so first thing that we can do is, we can take this, cut this out, this apparently the title of our node right here, or task right here, and we're gonna create an attribute of title which will be equals to this particular stuff that we've copied. All right, and in place of content we will be putting this thing. Let's cut this out and paste it like this. Okay, all right, like this. And now we'll write props right here like this, and in place of hard coding stuff, we're gonna take that title from the props, and we are gonna take the content from the props as well. Now you can see, up till now we haven't changed anything visually in this particular application, but if we look inside the code of ours, being coders or developers, we can see that we have successfully removed the hard-coded stuff from our node component, and we are now supplying the content that I want to get injected in this particular node via the use of React props. All right, the next thing that we want to do is, instead of using or providing these titles, contents like this, we want to use the title and contents from this particular array. So first thing that we can do is, all right, first things first, we have to export this from here. All right, let's export this tasks array from here. Let's export this as default, and in index.js. Oh, why I'm always going to index.js. We will be importing tasks from tasks. Why am I not being shown tasks right here? So we are actually in components, so we have to apply two dot operators like this, and then yeah, now I'm able to get hold of this. So now I have imported task. One thing that we can do is create let's say different components of this like this, and keep copy pasting them. For example, 4 of them we need, and then in every one of them we pass the title and content from tasks. All right, 0 1 2 3 for all 4 of these. But do we remember some studying some particular concept or some new topic that could actually help us like go through all of these elements and then substitute them for us inside this particular function, or inside this particular custom component of ours? And I hope you were able to guess it correctly. So we are going to use the looping method here, and the most effective one that we saw was the map method. So first thing, let's get rid of this from here, and we will be applying tasks.map, the map method. All right, and then inside this map method we pass some function. All right, so let's call this function create task, and then let's define this function at the very top like this, and then inside this function of ours we are going to return a node component. All right, like this. Now next thing that we need to do is, we know that this particular, let's say we are getting a task as prop from this tasks array, and we know that this particular map method is gonna iterate through every element like 1 2 3 4 0 1 2 3 4 speaking in terms of index over this array, and it is gonna put every element once inside this function in the place of tasks, which we are using at in the place of React props. And then what we will do is, we'll say that the title of the nth node is going to be task dot title. Oops, yeah, and the content is going to be task dot content, like this. All right, so still wondering why it's not working? And actually this is not just simple line of text. Instead, this is our logic, and we have to wrap it inside these curly braces of ours. And now if you take a look on this open window of ours, you can see that we have successfully created 4 cards which have these following tasks: water plants, exercise, deliver mail, and code. All right, so with some random chunk of data written in them. What we did up till now, let us go through it once again. Initially we were having hard-coded stuff in our node component. What we did in place of that, we used React props in order to make it dynamic. And then instead of having hard-coded title and hard-coded content, this starts getting the title and content dynamically with the props that we use from this. So, and if you're ever in confusion, you can always head over to these React dev tools, and once you click on this node, let's say in here, you always have this content and title, and you can see that the props that you have for nth particular component of yours, and always use this as a reference guide. And in app.jsx, we first use the map method over the tasks array which we exported from this tasks.js file of ours, and then we had one create task function which is going to be get called for every element of this tasks array. And then inside this create task function, we can see that we have this task as a prop, and we are extracting the title and content for every element that is being sent via this map method, and then we are injecting it to our node component. Now you might be thinking that we are done, right? No, actually there are still some loose ends inside this code. For starters, let's see why this console is showing one red dot. Okay, each child in a list should have a unique key prop. So apparently we didn't study much like as expected. And in the previous session we saw that whenever we are using this map method, or whenever we are creating a particular function and we are sending these props and different elements, or we are creating similar stuff out of some particular array or some other storage structure, then we are always required to explicitly mention an attribute of key in order for React to differentiate between these cards. Luckily, if you look inside tasks.js, you'll be able to see that apart from title and content, and a key value pair of ID is also mentioned for each element right here. So what we need to do is we just have to add another attribute of key and tap into the ID property of it. And then you will see that title is not task, not title, like this. All right, so I was saying that you'll be able to see that in terms of visuals, nothing must have changed. Okay, you can see it is the same that we had initially, but that particular warning that was being displayed to us in console is now gone. Okay, that was something that React wanted us to do. The next thing, let's try to see how much further can we reduce these lines of code that we have. So we have successfully used the React props, the looping method, this map method, and then we also studied something called the anonymous function, right? So why do we define this function externally? Let's cut this out and paste it inside the map method itself. And we know that since this particular function is right here, we can remove it, and then we have transformed it into an anonymous function. Great. Next thing, since we see that we are defining this function inside the map method only, so why not turn this into an arrow function? So let's remove the function, and since only one parameter is there, I'm going to remove the braces as well, putting this fat arrow like this. And we can also see that there is only one statement, so let's remove the curly braces as well. And if we remove it like this, let's see what are we getting right here. Now you can see, even though this particular line is getting down at the another level, but this entire brace from here to here will be considered one line. All right, so you can see how clean this code has transformed into. And one more thing, this particular brace that you are seeing right here, this one, all right, you can see that you can remove this as well, because we only have one statement in our function. But it is a good practice if you keep it, because this helps you as a standard practice. It is recommended to keep this return function or whatever component that you are returning in your function. It is best advised to wrap it inside these braces. You can remove this as well, but I am trying to promote the standard convention. So this way, now we had successfully further shortened our code and took that externally defined function. Man, I always forget to fork the initial sandbox. Okay, I have to do this double effort, right? Anyways, I will provide you 2 separate sandboxes. Okay, next time onwards I'll remember it. Anyways, so that was it. And what changes we made, just to go through them quickly once again. Used React props right here, made it dynamic inside app.jsx, imported the tasks array from tasks.js file, use the map method to iterate over the elements of tasks array, and call this particular function for every element task. And we know for every particular element we have 3 attributes right here: id, title, and content. And for id we mentioned the key attribute, title was placed under title, and content was placed under content. And this way we were able to iterate through all the elements and extract the title and contents of them and create 4 separate cards. All right, so I hope you were able to understand the stuff taught in this particular session of ours. We saw the arrow function, and then we further used and substituted the knowledge that we gained up till now inside the second version, the second part of our Todoist app. So we are now one step closer to the final version of this application that we'll be having at the end of this series, at the end of this playlist. So apart from that, do remember the suggestions that I want to give at the end of this session is: number one thing, always whenever you learn any new topic or any new method, let's say in this particular segment we learned what an arrow function is, always make it a habit to visit the official documentation or visit any good reference site like GSG and try to read about this particular method or the function. Because I don't have that much of let's say free space in terms of time to cover every hairy situations or the every edge case that a particular function of concern might get stuck into. So always read through the fundamental guide or the manual that you get for a particular function in order to know what led to the creation of that particular function and what all the nitty-gritties associated with it. Regarding the practice session that we have, always the same recommendation that it is I will never advise you to just watch this as for the entertainment purpose, or let's say even for learning purpose. If you're gonna just watch through the solution, if I'm asking you to pause the video and give it a try yourself for any particular practice of ours, and if you are just gonna simply watch the solution, that is of no good use to you. All right, learning happens when we get out of our comfort zone and when we try stuff, when we try to explore areas that were previously never seen. All right, so that's what my aim is in these practice sessions. Even though if you think that everything is going bouncer over your head, always try to even, let's say, put together the first piece of the puzzle. Try to use React props. Let's say if I'm taking this particular practice session case in point, try to put the React props in use. Even if you're not able to grasp the concepts of map and the anonymous or the arrow function, all right, even if you're one step closer, even if you took one step, that means you learned something. All right, and from the next point onwards, that one step is already covered. All right, and then you will be taking the second step. So in the coming time, for the nth iteration, you would have taken n steps. All right, but if you were just simply watching and skimming through the video, you will just be able to understand it for like 1 or 2 days, and max a week. After that, you're gonna forget whatever we learned. And I'm saying this from experience. So with this emphasis on practice, I'm gonna end the session now. And that is all from my side. I'll see you in the next one.